I have a question.
Yes.
So, hi everybody, I'm Tilly, and we live in Los Angeles and are thinking about moving to the East Coast, and it's going to be depicted by the school that I get for my daughter because I am during this COVID homeschooling that we've had, becomes more and more clear to me how just what an abomination that the schooling system is, that with a public school system. And she is tormented by it. She's very ADD and very artsy and very creative and super smart. And she's completely bored by school and cannot focus on the tiniest thing. So I'm determined to make her, to find a different spot just like this, where I think she would probably thrive in an environment like the Sudbury model. So I know I've seen this question written because I've done a lot of research, but what about with electronics? Because she's obsessed with, obviously, like most kids, but she's very, very, she finds something that she focuses on and she's obsessed. And do we allow electronics at the school? How is that monitored?
Yeah, that's a great question. We get asked that a lot too. So I'll start, and then I'd love if someone else wanted to jump in and fill in. Sure, Abraham, go ahead.
So the Tech and Media Committee manages the regulations for electronics, and the short answer is that you can come with electronics, your personal electronics, but you have to sign a contract, and this contract says that we are not responsible for any damage to your electronics, and if anyone tries to get your electronics without permission, then you can just file a JC case. So once you sign this contract, you agree to the terms, and then you can proceed to bring your electronics to school.
And Abraham, are you allowed to play them all the time, or are there restrictions on how often you can play those electronics?
In the contract, there is no line which says that there's a max time that you can play the electronics for. So it is possible that a person can play on their electronics all day, but because of human nature, people get bored of it and decide to do other more interesting things.
Okay, thank you.
We've really seen that. Yeah, Liz, please.
I'll just throw in here, my son is one that will sit and play on the computer all day long if he's at home. When he's at school, he does not. There are many much more interesting things going on that he's interested in, seeing what other kids are doing and playing with them. So it's not the case. I think, Kristen, you can confirm this, right? That he just sits and plays on the computer all day.
I was just gonna add about the electronics. That the teenagers proposed a tech-free Friday that happens every other Friday. We tried to make it every Friday, but some people didn't like that.
I forgot, yeah.
We have every other Friday where you can't use your electronics, and those days are really fun.
And Khadijah, if I remember correctly, the teens were the one that brought it to school meeting because they were kind of tired of the electronics kind of in our community. And I believe it was Kristen, if I remember correctly, that was like, I don't think that's a really good idea.
No, me and Abraham. We were just arguing for personal, rights. And,
yeah.
Making your own good choices, balanced diet. It was a wonderful debate that I believe raged for
a few weeks.
3 weeks. Yeah. This part isn't so much about technology, but that was a really great, that time of debating that was a really great time of also just modeling disagreeing without being disagreeable. So we had meeting after meeting of, okay, I see where you're coming from, and everyone was able to get in on the discussion. There also was definitely like lobbying okay, the vote is coming, like everybody come, so it's really interesting to just watch the democratic process through that. I know I was converted to vote for the every other week Tech Free Friday because of the really valid argument that the teens made about it's just for community. It's almost like an in-school field trip that we're all doing together and experimenting with how we would play and work without screens. Oh, okay, all right, you sold me. Abraham probably more reluctantly came along, but here we are, and we're trial and error. We're fleshing it out. Brandon, you had something to say.
Yeah, I just was thinking to myself over here, and I want to, if this is not to that topic, bringing it back to the technology thing again, because that's always something that is really interesting that gets brought up at for Sudbury schools, and just from like that right now is that with the current world and the pandemic, all of my hobbies in adult life just got canceled. So like before the pandemic, I was very active. I was going outside all the time. I was hanging out with people, very social. I was going to like movies, and I was taking a bunch of dance lessons and going to all these different places and meeting all these people and networking and et cetera. And now that's gone. And I'm kind of grateful that when I was a kid, I developed a sort of a close relationship with technology in a way to keep me entertained. Because now I can fall back on that as an adult, which is really weird because it's like I hadn't played video games in a few years, and now I'm finding myself like digging my Xbox out of my basement and I'm playing video games again to hang out with my friends. And it's like I don't know what I would do if I didn't have that that thing to kind of fall back on. So it's just a weird thought that came into my head while we were all talking about this that I wanted to share.
Actually, it's interesting. I realized I had another slide at the end, but in the staff list of Sudbury model staff around the world, we have a really cool email thread list. There was one during this time talking about graduates giving feedback during quarantine and saying like, it's really okay for us. Like we know how to entertain ourselves. Like we're not freaking out. We're not like, day 45 of quarantine,
right.
there wasn't, they just reported there wasn't a feeling of desperation. I don't know, you three are graduates.
Oh yeah. Yeah, because it was like a weird, healthy reminder of what that at AVS and Sudbury schools every day is a challenge of fighting boredom. How am I going to fill my day today? I don't want to be bored. The last thing you want is to be bored at school. So I was like, oh man, I feel like I'm 12 years old again. I'm stuck. I'm like in the house, got to figure out what to do with my day. I can't go anywhere. What am I going to do? So yeah, I had to get creative for sure.
I'll share something, and I too love this conversation, and I think I'll touch a little bit on my experience around electronics and also boredom in what I've witnessed in my son who attends the school, and he's almost 8. So I really toyed with the whole electronics conversation for the past 5 years, and I would say over the past year and a half, I feel very grounded in the relationship that I personally have with electronics. And for that reason, my son now has an unlimited use of electronics through the day. He has his own phone, he has his own laptop, he has his own, we've even allowed him to create certain social media accounts. But I say that I share that because, I've seen in him like little things like at micro level adjustments where I've seen where he'll create out of boredom with using electronics. Just like last week, he was watching a show. I think it was either Peppa Pig or one of those shows where all of a sudden he was in a room on screen for at least about an hour and 15 minutes. And he comes running out and he says, I need your help. I need your help. I need you to come to the garage and bring this ladder. And he takes it out in, into our pool area, and he sets up the ladder like a diving board. And then he goes back in, changes, comes back out and says, this is my diving board. I'm going to dive from here, and he jumps. I mean, to him, it was a dive. But I think and I'll share another example. So he's not here today. Him and my husband are in Orlando buying an ATV. And so he says to me about 2 weeks ago, he says he sees somebody riding an ATV and he starts exploring, what is this? What does this machine do? I want to explore it. And he asks a lot of questions. And then, and I had no insight. I had no idea that we would be buying an ATV today, but he goes on YouTube, he watches a bunch of videos on how they work, what the machine is, how you drive it, the safety of it, the whole thing. And then he says to me, I really want this. And I say, how much is it? And he even put it in Amazon, and or Amazon or Google, wherever it was. And he says it's $650, And I mean, in his world, he doesn't really understand the concept of what $650 is. But the point being that, he did all this research with this unlimited availability of an electronics that provided him the opportunity to research this much. And, and I shared with him, I said, well, not right now. I don't feel comfortable buying this right now. And I explained to him, our business is a little slow and maybe we can reconsider in, a couple of months. And he was okay with it. And he went back. And then 2 days later, he did more research, just out of a pure, curiosity of I really want this thing. What else can I do? And he came back and he said, oh, but Mom, if I don't get the reverse feature, then we can get it for $550, and I don't have to have the reverse feature on it. And he literally, I was convinced, only purely from the perspective of his drive to do whatever it takes to get this thing that he really wants. And so, yeah, sure enough, they're in Orlando today. So I really did, my whole relationship with electronics through this education model, and also conscious parenting work I've done, has completely shifted. And I don't feel like we should have any. Of course, I mean, every child is different, and the relationship that we have with our children is different, and that's more important in deciding what's appropriate. But once we shift that relationship that we have with, for example, boredom, or we have with, for example, electronics, I feel like so many of these questions just organically get answered.
Thank you. He is very tenacious. I like that about him.
Well, and it's interesting that you say that, because he was never that child, right?
Oh, really?
He was, I mean, yeah, he was never that child. He was definitely more, I would say, shy, very reserved, very, and he still is to some degree, but I think he's built this confidence where he can be that part of him still and accept that part of him that will always watch before he acts. But at the same time, the minute he understands that this is safe enough to do, he's steps over to the other side and tries,
That's
while
really
knowing
cool.
that that's who he is. Yeah.